Hello, my friends. This is Andy and Hedieh coming to you live from Orange County, California on a special 9/11 show. And it's, you know what I love?
What?
That as older people, or an older person with a younger person, we have so much in our history.
Yes.
So many different phases of our life, almost different people.
Almost different people.
Yes. And today I put a post on my Facebook page that I said where I was during 9/11. We'll go into that just a little bit. But then I said, where were you on 9/11? And everybody that posted could say exactly what they were doing, where they were sitting on a couch, on a certain chair, eating cereal. I mean, I can't remember what I did yesterday,
right?
Much less what I did, a year ago. But 20 years ago, we can remember exactly where we were.
Yes.
And you happened to comment on my post, and I was thinking, gosh, did we ever talk about that?
No.
Because we've not had a 9/11 together.
No.
So it never really came up. But I knew of your history of working with the FBI and some other stuff, which again, we'll get to in just a minute. And so as you told me the story, my jaw hit the ground and I went, oh, I didn't know that. And then what happened after that? And then what happened after that? And you're going, well, then in Chechnya, and then you went on. So I believe, based on our audience who follows us on our Living the Fearless Devotional podcast and live broadcast we do, I think the people that have gotten to know you over the last several months would find this interesting. But even more so, people that have no idea who you are.
Well, that graphic sure is going to throw them off. They don't know who I am.
Yeah, that's
wow. My head cover came off.
But you have an incredible story, and so I thought it was important for us to go through that story because I think it's something Americans and people in the world need to hear about what was going on and how you tried to warn them.
We did.
All right. So I want to do this a little slowly. We have some comments coming up. And yes, if you could comment, that would be great. We would appreciate it. Of course, some of our most favorite people are on here, Amy and Priscilla. But please comment if you have any questions as we're going through this.
Yes,
feel free to ask questions. And we will, I'll do my best to get to them. But this story is wide. Is that a good way?
And I have to forgive me if I mess up some of the dates because this is I'm recalling stuff that's 25, 27 years old. So I'm going to do my best.
So I want to go back to the 90s and just focus on telling me where you were in your life. What faith were you following, and what was happening in your life in the 90s leading up to 99?
Okay, well, I think I have to explain how I came to Islam because I was, we mentioned this briefly, and I won't spend too much time, but I think it explains how I got into counterterrorism. So my first introduction to Islam was with an extremist group. And so I was like, oh, this is terrible. I want nothing to do with this. And I was going to leave, basically. Mm-hmm. And I came across what's considered a mystical community. It's known as the Sufis. So it was there that I found a home. But what I discovered, because here I am an American and now a Muslim, I knew nothing about the world politics of Islam. I was looking for a relationship with God. So what I was told is that I walked into the struggle for the soul of Islam and it's playing out in mosques across America. And I just thought that sounds ridiculous. I just couldn't believe it. And I just dove into understanding what exactly this fight was. And so this is the mid-90s. Mm-hmm. It starts in 1994 for me. We're in the height of the Bosnian war against the Serbs, and the Afghans were fighting a civil war. So the Afghans the Taliban wanted to gain control over Afghanistan, and they were fighting basically the secularists, the modernists, the Russians, the communists, and there was a massive recruitment in the United States for Muslims to go overseas and fight. So that's where my research began. Is in
the Taliban or for the Afghanistan?
For all sides. Everybody was recruiting. Okay. The extremists were recruiting. The patriots were recruiting. I mean, there were guys that were going over, converts that were going over to fight in Bosnia. One guy was known as the one-legged jihadi, and he was going in. They were just going to fight. They didn't know who they were going to fight with. And most people were saying we're fighting the Soviets in Afghanistan, but it was no longer Soviets there. They were just Afghans fighting Afghans. But we know now that it was the Taliban and then soon to be Al-Qaeda fighting for control of Afghanistan.
So in at this time when you're in your faith, then you find a leader that you...
Yes. So I was part of a particular Sufi community that was very outspoken against the extremists. Mm-hmm. So it was within that community that I was learning and speaking to young people that had either gone overseas or were considering to go overseas. I was like, what motivates you? Why would you do this? What do you think the fight is about? And I just started to do all this research, and I was attending local mosques in Northern California because that's where the community was based. And it was at one of those mosques that I ran into a couple of FBI agents that were just, they saw what we were doing. And basically they approached us and said, what are you guys doing? And I was like, I don't know, what are you doing? And that's actually how my relationship with the FBI began.
So just a little bit of more background just with you personally, because you how old are you in 94? If you don't mind me asking.
25.
25. So at 25, you're starting this new faith.
Yes.
And then in a very short period of time, you became a leading expert.
Yes.
But just understand, audience, is that you were a very good student.
I just graduated law school.
And you were in law school and graduated.
I passed the bar.
You went to USC and UCLA.
Yes.
So you had a knack for gaining information and
yes.
and becoming what essentially would be an expert.
Yes. I mean, I was consulting for the FBI from 95 onwards, but it wasn't, my appointment to Afghanistan didn't start till 2004. So, I'd worked pretty hard by the time I was appointed to the embassy.
Okay. This video we're going to show, this was not 99, though. This was 94?
90, the video's 98.
98.
It's the opening day of a conference that we had hosted for 15,000 people. The president of Chechnya, if anybody knows where that is, was our chief guest of honor, and I was one of the speakers.
Okay. So just for maybe a little bit of context, people to see you, how you were back then, and show that you were actually doing this, because there is a little bit of, credibility that you want to give when you're talking about this. Just like you and I decided, let's go on Facebook and tell a story. No, I want to show where you were at that time.
Well, and it's funny because I have people that post on my Christian Post articles, like, I don't even know if I believe she was a Muslim. And I'm like, okay.
All right. So here's a little bit of video of Hedieh, and you're speaking in front of how many people?
This room has about 6,000 people in it. It was the opening ceremony. And the interesting thing is CNN, so you'll see the clip is from C-SPAN, and CNN covered the conference because, of course, this is entirely coincidental, folks, but it happened to be the day of the Africa bombings. So Bin Laden's first official strike on the United States happens the opening day of our conference.
Okay. Here's a little bit of Hedieh. I'm not sure when I'm going to stop it. We're just going to play a little bit just to show you speaking in front of these groups.
See me young.
Yes. Here we go. Oh, I got it. Sorry, got to mute my mic or else it'll get an echo.
Unfortunately, I lack the genius and skill of my chairman, so I wrote a speech. In the name of God, most gracious and most merciful, and in honor of our beloved Prophet Muhammad, may peace and blessings be upon him. I welcome you to the Second International Islamic Unity Conference. We are honored that you have chosen to join us this weekend and hope that you enjoy and benefit from the wisdom and scholarship that will be presented throughout the next 3 days. We sincerely thank our guests who have traveled from distant lands to represent their people and to show the true diversity and beauty of the universal Muslim community. Islamic Supreme Council of America was organized in response to the overwhelming requests of our members to create an advocacy organization which would represent the traditional teachings of Islam, both in the American political system as well as in the media. It is our sincere desire to demonstrate that the majority of Muslims in the United States and throughout the world advocate peace, tolerance, moderation, and most of all, love among all members of humanity.
What'd you say?
I did believe that when I said it.
Yeah. So interesting. I have this weird feeling that I saw that.
Really?
Yes. I don't know. Or
you could have been watching CNN. It was before Fox.
It's possible because I was a big fan of CNN back before they became lunatics.
Right.
How is it because women in Islam are not generally looked upon as authorities or anything? How is it that you became, they say, hey, Hedieh, speak before all these men?
Well, honestly, it was, so the chairman of the organization that I represented was new to America, and I wasn't. And so, I'd been involved in politics since I was young. My father was very involved in the Republican Party. And I spoke perfect English. And so he was maybe wise enough to realize that I was an asset and put me out front. So I organized the conference. I was responsible for 157 speakers. We had 350 hotel rooms, 15, 16,000 guests. And I was responsible to coordinate the entire thing. So it was a monumental effort.
So that speech, after that speech, it went well, I'm guessing. And then,
very well.
And then, so were you asked to do more things after that and were put in the position of leadership or?
Yes, I was the one responsible for all of the administration organization. I moved to DC specifically for this purpose after this conference. And it's funny because Amy's asking, what's that guy behind me? Well, after I speak is our chief guest of honor, who was the president of Chechnya, President Aslan Maskhadov, who's now dead. And so the guy behind me, also now dead. And everybody to the right of President Maskhadov that was in his party is also now dead. The Russians killed them all. So after Bin Laden attacked the United States, which I guess we're going to go into that backstory, there has been just a constant massacre of Chechens in what is now, still part of Russia. They never gained their independence fully.
Okay, so that's 98. And what is happening between 98 and 99 that gets you to another important place in our history?
So President Maskhadov was our guest, and he stayed with us a number of days, and he had asked us to come back to Chechnya because he wanted to present evidence that after the Africa bombings, that Bin Laden had set his sights on the United States. He was recruiting students and foreign fighters to plan this spectacular attack against the United States, and he was using Chechen territory because it was somewhat lawless, and was trying to acquire nuclear suitcase bombs and all kinds of weaponry. And he was really worried because he still had this problem with Russia. And he's like, the last thing I need is for this guy to attack off my soil or me be involved and my people get killed because of it, which is actually what ended up happening.
Well, it's important, I think, to remind everybody is that we supported Bin Laden up to this point, I'm guessing.
Up until 96.
Money and support to
fight the Russians.
To fight the Russians.
Exactly. So we thought the enemy of our enemy is our friend. Wrong. Again, this goes back to my article, the article I wrote before this last one about
in the Christian Post.
In the Christian Post, which was the State Department never understands religion. They just never do. Right. So they just figure, oh, okay, we'll use this ally against that ally, but they didn't understand they were fighting an apocalyptic war that would eventually turn against the United States. And so arming them would be our demise. But they didn't think that was relevant. They thought it was practical, exactly what we're doing with the Taliban now. They thought we're negotiating with businessmen. So these are not businessmen, folks.
That was the most ridiculous thing I heard.
Yeah.
So when the president tells you, the president of Chechnya tells you that, hey, I need some help against this Bin Laden dude.
Yes.
That you guys are had been supporting. What's the reaction? Is it like, well, no, this is one of our business buddies, one of our friends?
Well, our chairman decided, I need to tell the Americans, what do we do? And I was like, well, let's do an open forum at the State Department. I was like, we'll tell the world. We'll just do it on the biggest platform we can get. And therefore we'll exculpate the Muslims. The Muslims won't be blamed because you will have warned them. And he's like, that sounds a little bit dangerous. And I was like, no, it'll be fine. Everything will be fine.
What made you
famous last words?
What made you feel like it would be fine? It's this important?
Yes.
That we give them this information and that they believe us. So you are gonna, no matter how difficult it looked like it might be, that you said it doesn't matter. It's that important.
Exactly. that we would be patriots. We'd be hailed as patriots.
Yes. And you were convinced.
Yes, absolutely. I was convinced.
And so your job at this point is to put together the presentation
Yes.
for this
I wrote it. I wrote the presentation, did the guest list, organized it with the State Department, and hosted it on behalf of our organization.
And where did you research your information? Where did you just use the president of Chechnya as your source, or was
mostly the source? But I had done a tremendous amount of background research on how Bin Laden was recruiting. I had by that point interviewed hundreds of guys that had gone overseas, family members, people that had come back, family members of kids who did not come back, and basically understood their methodology.
Were you working with the FBI yet, or you
Yes.
just had befriended them?
I was an informant since '94.
Okay. And had you shared in this information with them yet about what you had learned from the president of Chechnya? And what he wanted?
Yes, we had, but it was literally two guys. It was literally two guys in the entire FBI. So it was.
And did they look at you like, you want to do what? Did they?
No, they were just like, okay, they didn't pass judgment. They were, they were just kind of like, okay, that's another data point. But, it was a really, really small effort in the United States. There was only 2 Arab speakers in the entire country.
Did they think that Bin Laden was a threat? The 2 guys?
Yes, they did. Yes, they did.
Did they tell you what they had told any other person in the government, U.S. government, about their feelings?
They were very low ranked. It wasn't until much later that the big hitters got involved, but they were just writing small reports that nobody listened to. And we were doing a lot of the open source intelligence for them because they did not have the internet. They only had an intranet.
That's so crazy.
Yeah.
That's so crazy. So in the 1990s, leading up to 2001, I was a police officer with the city of Anaheim. I was in detectives. For some of that, I was also in patrol and some other stuff. But I had been in major incidents with major narcotics and some other stuff. So I worked with the DEA. There are cases I was working with and the detectives with the FBI, ATF in regard to forgery and weapons, but forgery and weapons. And so the one thing that all of us in law enforcement knew is that there was a rivalry between each one of those law enforcement agencies and our law enforcement. And you include CIA and all this. CIA is mostly
CIA didn't talk to anybody.
Yeah,
Still don't really, but
CIA's intelligence gathering. They're not really law enforcement, but the intelligence gathering. You got FBI, which is law enforcement investigation at a federal level. You got DEA, which is narcotics and just some like shaky shenanigans. And then you got the ATF, which is another way, weapons and that kind of stuff. Secret Service also does Treasury investigations. So you got all these agencies. They would not dare share any information with each other.
And they didn't want to divulge their confidential resources and that too. They didn't want to compromise their investigations or their research.
Yeah. I mean, but also they didn't want the big bust going to anybody else getting credit for any kind of bust that might happen.
Yeah.
And so with that, did you already feel that working with the FBI? Did you already realize that, this information that you had, you couldn't share? Like you couldn't go to the CIA.
I went everywhere. I was not limited in that capacity at all. So, I mean, when I was in DC, I literally locked on doors. Oh goodness. I'll never forget this one conversation.
I love these.
We knocked on every congressional door that would listen to us. We went and told everybody we can get our hands on. And we had described it as the extremists persecuting the moderates here in the United States, which mimicked what was happening overseas. And we begged them to pay attention to it. I'll never forget, there was one African-American congresswoman who said, what you're describing to me would have my people still hanging on trees. And we just stood there like literally gape mouthed, like we didn't even know what to respond, because basically she was saying the way we were describing this internal conflict was like as if it was between white America and Black America, and were white America to suppress it, Black people would still be lynched. Mm. And we just realized that people were just not willing to hear it.
Does her name rhyme with Maxine Waters or no?
No.
Oh, darn.
I can't remember her name. so long ago. I can't remember her name.
I'm glad I didn't say Maxine.
It was one of the worst meetings we ever had.
You've told me a couple of these conversations that are just jaw dropping. Like these people don't live in the real world.
No,
they just don't want to.
They don't understand religion.
So one thing I want to ask, and I meant to ask it earlier, is that when you're talking about the Muslim, what was it called again?
Muslim Brotherhood, the extremists.
You got the extremists, and then you had the
who are Sufis.
Sufis. Is it like, I mean, is there a rivalry there, or can they like show up together and get along and have coffee together?
No.
Is it like
no? They kill them.
They kill each other.
Yeah, I mean, not kill. Usually, don't kill each other. It's usually just the Sufis being killed. So in Africa, what we were trying to explain to people is that before they turned their sights on the West, they had to culturally deconstruct Africa and South Asia, because that's where Sufism was most prominent, and it was holding on to the cultural norms. So they had to level those people first before they could plant a base from which to attack the West.
So my reason for asking that is I'm just wondering, did some people think that you were saying this about Bin Laden just because you had a grudge against?
They knew we had a grudge. They thought, there was another congressperson who said to us, this sounds like a marital dispute. You're asking us to get involved in a marital dispute. And I'm like, are you not understanding me? I am not talking about a marital dispute. So they thought when we went and did the State Department address, we were just alarmists. We created a Spectre Bazaar to gain attention. We just wanted fame. Spectre Bazaar? Yes. Is basically making up some dramatic hypothetical to get attention.
So you continued with this bazaar.
Yes, with a Spectre Bazaar.
And so you're putting together this conference in 1999. You're putting the slides together, you're doing the research, and you're heading it up.
Yes.
And you are focused on, hey, you got to listen to me about this Bin Laden dude.
Yes.
This guy's dangerous. Did you have any idea that what he would do, or just that he was going to do something?
Just that he would do something. So what our chairman had outlined was that he was amassing weapons. And he was looking for these suitcase bombs, and he was gathering troops, people, bodies, fighters.
Wow. All right. So you set a date for this conference?
Yes. It was January 7th, 1999. Never forget the day.
And so how many people are invited to this conference, or how many people? Is it something you put like on what is that, on like Facebook? Like, we're having an event.
No, because it was the State Department. So it had to be by guest list.
Okay.
So I think there was about 200 people there.
200 people?
Including, 50 government representatives of every branch of government.
Anybody that we would know would have been there? Or you don't want to say?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. It was a long time ago. I mean, maybe back then it was, and I don't remember.
Rumsfeld wasn't there, or
no. It was a low level thing at that point, because it was just a way of us presenting an idea. There was a lot of staffers there who may now be Congress people or people in other branches of power, but at the time they were staffers.
The staffers essentially write everything.
Exactly.
And so it was more important to have them there probably than the person themselves.
Exactly.
The person themselves.
And there was a lot of reporters.
And so you put on this conference, and although you put it together, someone else.
Yes, our chairman spoke.
Okay. And
he delivered all of the addresses.
And what did they tell? What did he tell them?
What
did you tell them through him?
What I described is that Bin Laden was it was a U.S. open forum that Bin Laden was about to attack the United States.
And did you just laid it out?
We laid it out. And it was.
You talked about the suitcases. You talked about potential nuclear devices.
Recruiting of students. And the most famous line that came out of that is 80% of the mosques in America were influenced by extremists. That's what really pissed him off.
Well, I'm going to get to that. So you lay out all this information. How long does it take to give them all that information? Is it an all-day thing?
No. It was about an hour.
About an hour. So after this hour conference, you wrap it up, and did you get like standing ovation?
Not a standing ovation. I think most people in the room were shocked.
Like, what are you telling us?
Because basically what we said was that the recruitment and the threat was against the United States. So that the recruitment was largely happening in the United States and in Western countries. And that's the biggest problem, is that it's going to happen in the United States. And so everyone's like,
huge.
Yeah. Everyone just thought we were nuts. Just absolutely nuts. I thought it was going to go over a lot better than it did.
I don't remember the dates, and I'm sorry if I'm putting you on the spot.
No, January 7th, 1990. Oh,
but the bombing of the
embassy is 98.
98.
Yes.
Okay.
So this is about 6 months after the bombing.
Okay. when did the bombing of the SS Cole? Is it the SS Cole?
Cole, I believe, is 92.
Okay. So, I mean, there was enough going on.
Yeah, but nobody thought it was coordinated and it was going to be a large event and that it was going to happen in the United States.
Had the first...
first Trade Center had occurred. That's 94, I believe.
What more did they need?
Ramsey Youssef, they thought it was just some dope with a truck full of explosives.
Right. All right. So what ends up happening after the conference? You guys are hailed as like, oh, you guys are fantastic. Thank you for the information.
Goodness. It was horrible. We were attacked by not only the U.S. government, but we were attacked by the Muslim community. They issued a public press statement by all the national Muslim organizations that we were officially boycotted. We couldn't shop in markets. We couldn't go to conferences. We had FBI protection. It was a mess. It was an absolute mess.
So the article comes out in the Wall Street Journal.
This is post 9/11.
Oh, this is just before.
Yes, because it lays out what happened. They lay out the story. They lay out the narrative.
Okay, so everybody's not demonized, but
yes, we were demonized.
You were demonized.
Yes, it was horrible.
And did anybody say no? Bin Laden's our friend. Did anybody go that far?
No, because the fatwa, Bin Laden's fatwa, came out in 98.
Okay. All right. So then let's just. So all this happening, and you're at some point, you're just saying
we get some people's attention. Like we had the opportunity to meet Richard Clarke, who was the National Security Council. It was then Clinton. So Bush doesn't come into office. We met with very high levels of people in the FBI, one of whom is a dear friend of mine you spoke to on the phone the other day. And so there were people in the national security apparatus that were listening to us. And of course, some of the foremost terrorism experts like Steve Emerson, who runs the Investigative Project, was working back then. He and I were good friends. We did a lot of work together, his staff and our staff. Daniel Pipes. And others, people that were in the conservative world that were looking at these things because they saw it.
But did anything change? Did anybody go any further with this information that you had laid out and the information that has been gathered leading up to 2001?
Not at all.
Nothing's happened.
No, we were basically called weirdos.
All right. So then where were you on 9/11?
I was in my home in a condo in DC watching TV at the breakfast table.
And then you catch the news at what point? When the first plane went in, the second plane in?
I was watching when the first plane hit.
And then in that time, a lot of people thought it was just like, it was an accident.
Yeah. I mean, it didn't feel like an accident to me, but definitely after the second plane hit, we knew it wasn't an accident.
Yeah, the first plane I remember, because I was on my way down the 91 freeway towards the police department. I had just left the gym. And listening to Howard Stern. Howard Stern says, he was interviewing Pam Anderson. And they thought, a plane ran into the building. They didn't know if it was like a Piper or what it was.
Right.
Because everybody saw it after. That seems like a very big hole for a little tiny plane. Most planes would have hit it and bounced off and slid down the side. And I think I arrived at the detective bureau and got in the office when the second plane hit. And then that's when we knew that that's not a coincidence.
Right.
So when the second plane hit, what are some of the first thoughts that you had?
I got to get out of the city.
Because you knew.
Because I knew.
Did you know it was Bin Laden, or did you think it was just a terrorist attack?
Of course, I didn't know it was Bin Laden directly, but this is something that we had predicted was going to happen. We knew. We had firsthand information from President Mossadegh that it was happening. I had interviewed hundreds of guys that suspected it would happen at some point in time. They had fought in those wars overseas. They had friends that were there. That it was inevitable. And so once that happened, I knew I had to get out of the city. And so I got my go bag. I always had a go bag. And I drove 13 hours to Michigan to get out of the city.
Did you stay on the radio listening to the news?
Yes, absolutely. And I actually I was wearing a head cover, and I took my head cover off because I was afraid I'd get attacked in stores along the way while I stopped for gas. But I packed food and I didn't stop except for gas once.
I'm sorry, this is just an interesting side note. Do you have to pray to your God? As a Muslim,
not my God, my old God.
Did you play the guy said, listen, I got to take this head cover off?
Yes,
Did you do
I was
any of
yeah, absolutely. But it's in times of difficulty that you are allowed. You have an exemption.
that? Wow.
Yeah, it was
All right.
intense.
Do you have to get on your knees and face east or west or
No.
whichever direction or anything like that?
No, you never know. You never know if he's ever listening anyway. So it's just wing it.
So as you're driving, I'm sure then you're hearing that the plane crashed into the Pentagon
Yes.
and then Shanksville.
Yes.
And then are you thinking, when's this going to...
Yeah, we were just convinced that this is the apocalypse.
Oh, was somebody in the car with you?
No, but I mean, I don't remember what the timing of all of it, but at some point I arrived into Michigan, and so we're stocking up food. Oh, I never forget it because some of the guys went. It was a 300-acre ranch that our community had, and one of the guys went to go fill up all the propane tanks. We thought we'd be locked down in our place because the people would come after us for weeks, months. We had no idea. And so they went and tried to fill 11 propane tanks at the gas station. So they called the ATF. So because I was the point of contact for the community, I got the sheriff calling, ATF calling, who's getting these propane tanks? What is going on? They were filling water barrels. It was crazy.
Wow.
But hundreds of people came from all over the country to stay at the farm.
People just knew where to go.
Yes.
This is where we go.
This is where we go.
It was not like a woo woo or a light or anything like that. Nothing.
Phone calls.
Phone calls.
But cell phones weren't working, right? So it took a while until you could make a phone call.
Wow. All right. So you guys are going there. I have a friend of mine who used to work for LAPD at the time. He had already, I think, gotten in some accident or something happened. He had retired and he was doing security high-level security. And was doing security. He's dead. He's passed away now, so I can tell the story. But he was the security guard for the Bin Laden family, who were living in New York. Not, they have a huge family, right? I mean, these people have like 300 people in their family, and the Bin Laden family
they got out. Yeah,
they got on a plane and left. Was there any consideration for your group and you to feel like, we got to get out of this country? We have to go to Canada, or we have to go anywhere like that? Or you thought that you were pretty safe?
No, we thought we were safe for where we were.
Okay.
The FBI, everybody else, National Security Council, everybody else knew where we were. So we thought we were safer.
Wow.
In Michigan.
So how long did you have to stay locked down in this compound?
It was, as long as I remember, it was weeks. It felt like forever.
With hundreds of people?
Yes.
Did you know these people?
Some of them.
Yeah.
My daughter will tell you stories about the farm. We have stories about the farm.
Yeah. Just knowing you, did you have to cook for any of them?
I usually did not have cooking duty. I was not given the cooking duty. I was the one on the phone.
Yes. After all, you tried to tell him about Bin Laden. You said, look, I tried to tell him.
Yeah. I mean, our phone rang off the hook. I mean, there was dozens of media interviews. Every major paper, Sacramento Bee, Los Angeles Times, New York Times, Wall Street Journal.
Is it because of the 99?
The 99 address.
They go, oh.
It was all documented. Everything was documented. We had told them.
You had put it together. But somebody else said.
Yes, but it was, so I was the Secretary General of Islamic Supreme Council at the time. And so everybody knew that I had hosted it. And so it was all over the news. The conference was documented. Their boycott of us was documented. And then afterwards, once he struck, they documented that too.
Let me just go back a little bit. At what point did you realize it actually was Bin Laden? Where were you in this harrowing story?
It was still in Michigan, I presume.
Okay.
Still in Michigan. Oh yes, because we got a number of phone calls from Muscadov at the time.
So I'm going to skip way ahead to now, because just recently there's been, I think it's the current leader of the, I don't know what they're calling it now, the Afghanistan of
Islamic Emirates of Afghanistan.
I think one of the leaders, supposed leaders in there, said that it wasn't Bin Laden who planned 9/11.
Who was it?
I don't know. I'm just. So are you?
Oh, maybe they're going back to that conspiracy theory that it was the United States that planned to.
I don't know. It's the Muslims over there in Afghanistan.
Yeah, well, they say it was the Jews.
The Al Qaeda is saying it.
Yeah, no, most of the Muslims say it was the Jews.
So there's no possible way, right, that it was anybody other than Bin Laden.
I mean, not from what I know from a Western context or a Muslim context. No.
Okay. I just want.
I mean, we may have audience members who think the whole thing was staged too. Yeah. So no, folks, I don't believe that for a second.
Okay.
I mean, one person, I remember recently the guy who he was working out with for a while was like, I heard that the place that the Pentagon supposedly hit was the place with all the records from it. And I was like, no, those records, those investigations still went forward into the corruption and everything else. And I don't know, just to me, there's some of the stories are kind of loopy.
I didn't know he said that. I would have said, you mean to tell me a guy that only knows how to take off, they didn't teach him how to land, knew how to fly into the file cabinet. That's inside of a building.
Exactly.
Exactly where to fly. Okay, buddy.
Yeah, and those of us who drove to the Pentagon many, many times after that saw, because some people say they staged it. They staged the wreckage, that the Pentagon was perfectly intact after. And I was like, well, you didn't drive there every day because it was not intact.
Right. All right. So it's coming out that you had put on this conference. Is there you want to show the document? This is, again, it was in the Wall Street Journal, but we have another version of it that shows here. Is there any particular price? I know it's hard for people to see, especially if you're watching on your phone. But
I think the parts where it says, so he was, Sufi community that back in January 1999, when we thought the terrorists had given the Twin Towers their best shot, Sheikh Ahmadi went to the State Department to deliver an address, Islamic extremism, a viable threat to U.S. national security. And so how was he rewarded for his courage? Well, a group of organizations denounced him, ranging from CARE, Council on Islamic Relations, ICNA, AMC, and issued a statement twisting his words and portraying him as feeding Islamophobia rather than fighting it. The Sheikh emphasized on the Today Show last week how important it was to cooperate with authorities to help them get the men who had so monstrously attacked the Islamic faith. The difficulty, he tells us, is that our voices had trouble being heard because the extremists had hijacked the mic. In the aftermath of the worst attack on our home soil in American history, we might do well to heed a leader who did his best to warn us before.
Wow. This gave me the chills. I don't know. It seems so much of what we're going through now that there's the truth and it's being lambasted as the lie. I'm not talking about the election. I'm talking about the issues with the pandemic, the issues with a whole bunch of stuff, that conservatives are terrorists, that, it's very similar that this that was happening to you then it's happening again.
Well, I've told you many times when I watch what's happening now, the DHS security alert about who is the greatest domestic terror threat right now, those who are avoiding COVID measures. And I said the hardest part for me is, I told you we met the guy who was building internment camps. Like, Muslims were afraid for a very long time that they were the ones getting stuck in the internment camps. The programs, the counterterrorism programs that I helped build, I literally spent, 15 years of my life and blood, sweat, and tears to build those programs, are now being turned against the community that I love and am a part of. And it's deeply distressing because there was a movie once, I remember, Wag the Tail, or the Tail of the Dog, or Wag,
and tail that wags the dog or something.
Yeah, and it's about this euphemism that
wagging the dog.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's so unfortunate that things in our government can be turned around on a dime and pointed at the wrong people. Wag the dog.
Yeah.
Thank you, Amy.
Amy always has the answer.
Doesn't she? She's like just a wealth of knowledge.
I know.
But the funny thing is Amy said she didn't know the U.S. was supporting Bin Laden. Yes, we actually created Bin Laden, Amy, because again, we have no appreciation for the impact of religion. If you read what the Wahhabi Islamic extremists believed and what they were plotting, you could never think those people were your allies. But the problem is because American policymakers don't have enough of God in their heart to understand how significant it is for everybody else. It's something that even Mike Pompeo talks about a lot now that he's out of government, is that we can't ever make peace with radical Islamists because their goal is to subdue or destroy us.
Right. Yeah. So you're in the compound, the story's coming out, and is it now safe to come out? Do they say,
yes.
oh, you know what, we knew this all along? I mean, what
No, there was a mad scramble. I spent weeks going back and forth to New York. I'm kind of a big deal at this point because now I'm a big deal. Now I'm a big deal. Now I'm like, whoa, that chick knew something.
Before you were a conspiracy theorist.
I was an alarmist, crazy lady with the head cover, young, like what a nutcase she is. And now I was kind of prophetic, I was the big cheese then.
Now they're scrambling to support you and to be.
Yes. And so by January, Bush wins the election. And I was telling Andy today, I know people are very upset at him and his approach towards President Trump, but it was, those years when Bush first came into power, it was such an honor to be around him and his cabinet and Vice President Cheney, who I had the honor of meeting several times too, and Don Rumsfeld, Wolfowitz, Doug Feith. They were big thinkers, and they really believed and were passionate about what we were trying to do. Of course, it all went terribly wrong, but the goal ultimately, you heard Condi Rice the other day on Ben Shapiro, that there really was a plan, but America didn't have the stomach for the plan.
Mm-hmm. So would you say that Bush's administration put together a very good plan to start?
Yes.
And if we just would have stuck to that plan,
yes,
things.
If we had the stomach to build nations, if we had the will of the American people to stick with it and to do it right. But again, I mentioned there was such insidious corruption in our government as well, with our contractors in the military industrial complex, that also led to our failure. It's not just the American people got tired of the war, but that our industrial complex was corrupt and the money was squandered and we didn't accomplish what we were supposed to accomplish.
What do you think it is about the lack of stomach that, I don't know if, I think the people after 9/11 want to go and say, I don't care if you bomb the hell out of who you bomb the hell out of.
Right.
Don't bomb the hell out of that country.
And we did shock and awe. Remember shock and awe, folks?
Yeah, just lay them out. It's too bad that you live in this area, but you're going to die.
Out. Yeah.
That's one of the best ways to win a war.
Right.
What happens?
It was the aftermath that we didn't have the stomach for.
Okay.
And there was a bunch of mistakes. Brenner for Iraq, Brenner fired all 300,000 Sunnis. So basically, he had the brilliant idea that everybody who worked for Saddam Hussein was a Ba'athist and therefore needed to be destroyed. And the Shiites were going to help out. And the Shiites, he didn't think would ever align with Iran. Again, not understanding religion, that the Shiites of Iraq would align with Iran because they're Shiites and they're fighting the Sunnis for world domination. So if you don't respect that, I don't care if you like it, but you got to respect what people tell you they believe. And that we created we created ISIS because a bunch of Sunnis were unemployed and had lots of armory that we had left there.
I'm so sorry. Just to go back to Saddam Hussein, I was one of the few people that I think that I spoke up at the time, which I felt really odd because I really wasn't that much into politics until all this happened at 9/11. And I thought, I don't know if that's a good idea, getting rid of that guy, because it seemed to me that his brutality kept a kind of a lid on brutal people.
Yes.
That's just what that area of the world needs.
Right.
Do you think one of the biggest mistakes that was made is that we allowed them to hang Saddam Hussein?
Looking back, you could say that, like if we would have left it as it was, but the way the theory went was kids were getting radicalized. Islamic terrorism was taking root in the Muslim world because they had no freedom and they had no opportunities, that we were going to turn Iraq into Germany. Post World War II Germany. We had a Marshall Plan, or like Japan. We were going to turn it into a democratic nation. That's what I'm saying we didn't have the stomach for. Yeah. We went in, we created bases, we had control of oil fields, and then we just were like, oh, this sucks. And we left. And we left all of our equipment, just like we did in Afghanistan. Yeah. And then ISIS was running around with our RPGs and machine guns and flip-flops.
Yeah, well, the difference between, and again, I'm just using your analogy. I'm not sure how deep it is, but, in regard to Germany was already making cars like the Volkswagen and BMW and that kind of stuff, and they had other industry in Germany. But what would Iraq? Iraq had oil.
Oil.
But what else?
You don't need anything more than that.
Really?
It was a cradle of civilization.
Mm.
Iraq's biblical. You know what I mean? It's been around for thousands of years before Advent.
Could you modernize it? Could you make it just on the fact that they have oil?
Would it be the United States? No.
Right.
But you could have stabilized it enough.
Kind of like what we were doing with Afghanistan until
Exactly.
the nitwit got in there and pulled out.
Exactly. And Obama started it by pulling out of Iraq. You know, we had the surge. It was successful. And then it was like, okay, mission accomplished, get out. And again, you know, the endless wars, are they, you know, I understand, you know, Trump's philosophy was that we shouldn't have been in any of these countries at all. Bomb the hell and leave.
I believe he was changing his mind. I think they were convincing him that, no, we need to keep 2,500 people, military in there.
I mean, we had the $25 billion Bagram air base that we had built. That was a strategic location to 3 enemy powers.
And just like we do in Korea and just like we do in Japan and Germany, you keep a number of military in there just to keep a lid on stuff.
Exactly.
And every so often you just take somebody out.
Exactly.
Like, all right, you're getting out of line.
Exactly.
All right, let's go back. Sorry, didn't mean to go off on a little trail there. And so now you're the cat's meow.
I'm the cat's meow
in Washington.
Yes.
Did you hold any resentment? I mean, I would, because that's who I am. Did you have any resentment? I tried to tell you this happened because you didn't listen to us. Was there any of that? Did you want to go in there and say, I tried to tell you, or I told you so? Did you do any of that?
I mean, a little, but it was not useful. And by then the administration had changed. All the players were different.
Yeah, that's a problem with our government in some ways.
That every 4 years the people change?
4 to 8 years it changes.
And then they recycle them again? Yeah.
The recycling part is that.
Recycling is oh no, it's just like Groundhog Day. I mean, every 4 or 8 years, it's like you're literally watching a movie from before. I mean, Biden's administration is filled with Obama people, and I'm like, we destroyed
the same people, just they're older.
We destroyed the Middle East under Obama. It was just horrible. And after we messed up in the whole experiment in Iraq, we took out Gaddafi. And Gaddafi had made peace with the United States and had no interest in fighting the United States and hated the terrorists, but we took him out.
Right.
That was a disaster.
That was another one that
that was a disaster.
Yeah.
Like, we should have learned our lesson.
Yeah.
We should never have taken out Gaddafi. I had actually met Gaddafi. I went to his Garanimal camp in the middle of nowhere.
Did he try to marry you as one of his wives?
No, but it was so ridiculous. It was like 110 degrees and he made us sit outside and there were camels going poop in the background. It was like really something out of a funny movie. It really was.
That's so funny to hear you tell these stories, and then you and I are at a high school football game.
Yes.
Sitting on the bench. So you go, this is a woman that sat in with Gaddafi.
Yeah.
And camels poop.
The Lord is good.
Yeah.
The Lord is good.
All right. If you say so.
He is. And it was like this Friday Night Lights football game. I felt like I was in a movie. It was surreal for me. It really was.
Doing all this other stuff was real. Sitting in the stands was like living in a movie with me. All right. So you're going around and you have all these programs you're putting together. You're working with the FBI. Everybody's thinking highly of you, and you're no longer a crazy woman. You're now a very smart woman.
Yes.
And I wanted you to tell a story, if you don't mind, that suddenly they get a hold of you and say, we need you to fly somewhere and meet with a man and talk to him.
Yeah.
Can you tell that story?
Yeah. So
and this is when?
This is after 9/11.
About a year, 6 months?
Within 6 months.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was within 6 months. And we get on a plane. They tell us to go to New York, give us an address.
The FBI that sent you? Or the
National Security Council.
Okay.
And
Who's we?
Sorry, the chairman of the Islamic Security Council. It's just he and I.
Okay.
And my brother's there too. And we get this address and we go to this address. We take a cab, and I was describing it to Andy is that when we get up the elevator and you see, like, you go to the dentist's office or whatever, and it says suite 201, so-and-so's office. So this only had a number, but when you got buzzed in from that door, it was actually a fake front door. It led to a hallway, and it was the hallway. I don't know how to describe it, but maybe like 20 feet long. And it had two-way mirrors on one side where I presume they could shoot whoever was stuck in this hallway. And then there was a steel door, a reinforced door that was the actual door to the office. And that was about, 20 feet down. Then you got buzzed in that door. And when you went inside, all you saw was very austere, but it was very nice. You saw a picture of some man, which we presumed was somebody we were meeting or was associated with somebody we were meeting, and presidents and prime ministers and famous people and heads of business. And we're just like, wow, this guy must be really important. Then when you get into his office, there's pictures of stadiums, like very large buildings. And he had little model
like
structures.
Shea Stadium.
Exactly. And then he had these models of look like stadiums, but they didn't have like little people or anything. They didn't have grass. They didn't have AstroTurf in them. Right. They were just giant structures. And so
at any point, do you think that they're sending us to be executed? I mean, is there anything that you ever get where are they sending us?
When it's Richard Clark from the National Security Council, you figure you're pretty safe.
Really?
I mean, we were the cats.
Muslims.
We were the cat's meow by this
you're
point.
You're dressed in all your garb.
Oh, yes.
I don't know.
I mean, it was sketch. It was totally sus for sure.
Okay.
And we go in there and he goes, tell me your story. And so
this man, how old is he?
60-ish. Okay. Yeah. Very serious, very scary face, like very intense eyes.
What actor did he look like? Do you think? I just want to have the whole picture.
Yeah. A little bit like Clint Eastwood.
Oh, really?
Yes. Daunting, tall. Yeah. Not as good looking, not as strapping, but
that kind of
serious,
yes,
rugged.
Did you have like a piece of grass in his teeth?
No, he was far too high end.
Suit?
He had a suit. Yeah. Very sharp, crisp lines.
Suit.
Yeah.
All right.
Behind his big desk.
All right.
Very fancy furniture in the office, and nothing but like these fancy pictures of him with like very important people and these mock stadiums, these mock structures. And you understand the significance of the mock structures because by the end of our presentation, he didn't say more than 2 words. He jotted a couple things down on a piece of paper. And then he basically just said to us, I hope you do not think what you need to understand is the US won't tolerate this. And at some point, they will take action and the Muslim community will be the one that suffers. So if you were smart, you understood based on the structures in this man's office that he was somehow involved in building camps, internment camps. It was wild. Never heard from him again. And to this day, I don't know who he was.
Wow. What the heck's going on in our country?
Yeah, there's all kinds of...
This is real stuff.
Absolutely real. Absolutely real.
Any other people besides him? Was there like a secretary?
No.
There's what? The doors just went
people like Maxwell Smart.
Like that.
Just open. Yeah. And then and so when we walk out, so when we get in, because we're in this fake hallway, the door swings open.
Yeah.
And then when we leave, when he tells us to leave, the door swings shut behind us. And you hear, it's like a reinforced steel door. So it goes like a vault. And you're stuck in the hallway thinking to yourself, oh my God, is he going to let us out of the hallway?
And so he just says, tell us your story. You tell the story. Yes. Of what did you tell him?
He wanted to hear about the State Department. Where did our information come from? Where's all of our other research from? What kind of evidence do we have? How bad do we think the problem is in the United States? And then he dismissed us.
You think this is the guy?
Like kids.
This is the guy who actually runs the United States of America?
He's definitely, if there were 10 men in a room somewhere, he's definitely one of them if he's not hosting the meeting himself. So yeah, it was wild.
He'd be about 80 now, so he'd still be younger than the crotchety old geezer that we have in there right now.
But the point is, folks, that I think what worries me the most, and so by the time when we were wargaming towards the end of my career, most of my presentations, which I still have with me, that I would give to the Joint Terrorism Task Forces, my biggest fear was a civil war, and that this apparatus would turn against Americans. And that's what grieves me the most, is that that's what I see happening. So this man may be dead now, but he built camps that he thought he was going to stick brown people in. Mm-hmm. I wonder how he would feel about it if he knew they were to be used for Christians.
Conservative Christians. All right. Let me get to a couple of these questions that people have. Priscilla asked, what do you think about what is happening here in America and now how weak we are? Are they watching and waiting for to attack us again? Do you think another 9/11 is coming?
It's interesting, Priscilla, because now, of course, I have the Holy Spirit that tells me, like, gives me different wisdom, and the scholars, the biblical scholars that we listen to. And one in particular, Amir Tasfari, was saying that, the rise of the Antichrist is not a Muslim. And so, but until that point, and the reason is because the world will not unite behind a Muslim. Let's just face it. That's never going to happen. But up until that point, what will happen? So when we had the failure in Iraq and we saw the rise of ISIS, that's another time in my career where the phone just didn't stop ringing. Like it was really crazy, because we were watching, we're like, what in the, like, I was watching some 22-year-old kid in Kansas, like, hi, Bismillah Rahman Rahim. And I was like, what is happening? Hundreds and hundreds of American teenagers went over to fight for Syria, a country they'd never seen before. And I was like, what in the world would motivate them to want to do that? So my biggest fear is what does Islamic terrorism 3.0 look like? And does it happen here in the United States? Why would they need to, when you think about it? Honestly, I'm not so concerned about it, because I think to myself, why would they need to? They have a guy in the White House that is super supportive of them. He's empowering the Taliban with $20 billion of equipment. Why attack the United States?
My only answer to that question is that the Democrat Party, who's in power, the socialists or the liberals, however you want to call them, really are able to control much of America through fear.
For sure.
And so I think many of the thousands of Afghanis that they brought here unvetted.
Oh, yeah, that's going to cause us a problem.
I'm concerned as to how many of them are actually Taliban terrorists.
Yeah.
ISIS.
Yeah. That's why I'm telling
ISIS-K.
people, please share the gospel, folks, because you can change a heart. The most vile of people can be transformed.
Because it'll never hurt them if we are in fear. It only emboldens them and strengthens them.
And there's no reason to think that, they don't know they're not the leader of the Antichrist. They don't know that they're not going to win in the end. So would they bother to try? Because I know the extremists that are in the United States that have engaged in the cultural jihad for decades really believe, especially now with 2 Muslim Congress people, that they could subdue the United States into a Muslim nation. And why not do it when the president is weak? So definitely a possibility.
I think they have a fight on their hands. You look at some of the news today when you have Biden going into New York and Pennsylvania and where else did he go? He went somewhere else. Near the Pentagon. And no one shows up, really, right? You got Trump who goes to New York and he takes a picture with hundreds of
that's
police
just
officers.
A single picture, right?
Yeah, it's just like, and anywhere he goes, there's just thousands of people that wait in line in the rain and in the heat to see him. That there's going to, we may have a civil war here before Afghanistan is a civil war.
Exactly. That's my biggest fear.
Yeah. So Amy asks, Hedieh, when those in power are given fair warning, why, in your opinion, do they turn a blind eye?
A couple of reasons, one of which I stated is they just don't believe religion. They think guys in flip-flops and towels on their head are not going to pose any kind of threat to us. Like, who cares? That's just dumb. We're America. We've got the greatest military on the planet. We'll crush them like a bug. Well, look who's laughing now. Because they did not crush us like a bug. They crushed us like a bug. We didn't crush them like a bug. Right. You know what I mean? They have time on their hands, So I think that we just are constantly underestimating them. Yep. And it's our arrogance, it's our corruption, it's our lack of moral fortitude and vision that leads us to constantly underestimate them. And especially from people like us, we were too small and insignificant for them to take any notice of anything that we had to say. Right.
Oh, we have so many weaknesses with the addition of wokeness and the stuff that just causes us to not act because we think we're going to upset somebody.
We're
just so weak, Betsy has a question. Says that her question is: do you think Bush Jr. knew anything before 9/11? I've read he played a role.
So here's an interesting thing: is that I think it's the same thing with did we create ISIS? When you say knew, the question is, what did we know? Were people training, were brown people training to fly airplanes across this country? Yes. Was that odd? Did people report it as odd? Yes. Was there a tremendous amount of recruiting on college campuses of Muslims to go fight overseas? Yes. Was Bush Jr., similar to my friend, involved in equipping Bin Laden before the announcement of Al-Qaeda, equipping the Mujahideen against the Soviets? Yes, but that was a announced acceptable American policy. I told Andy one of my greatest private funders was one of the chief funders of Charlie Wilson's war, funding the Mujahideens. He funded my work because he was upset at having taken part in the rise of the Mujahideen. And so there was this certain amount of regret in it. And so, yeah, I mean, there's certain Crocs of Steel's with us.
Yes.
So there is a certain amount of inherent knowledge, but did they allow it to lead to an attack on the United States? I can't believe that. I can't believe that good-hearted people, Americans that love this country, would do that on purpose.
You know, you already talked a little bit about President George W. When you were with him and talked to him, I mean, we're pretty good at gauging people and
he's awesome.
Getting a feel for who they are. One of my questions when I started going to Calvary Chapel Chino Hills with Pastor Jack, I got a good feeling. But I also wanted to confirm. I went to somebody that I know that knows him really well and says, "Hey, is this guy
for real?
For real? Is this him? Or is he acting now and then is a major pain in the ass when he's not on camera?" And he said, "No, what you see is who he is, always. He never changes."
That's the way W was.
And so that was my question.
Extremely sincere, extremely passionate, always asked intelligent questions, really, from all intents and purposes, as an outsider, looked like he believed. And I had lots of friends at that time because I was an appointee of President Bush that worked for him, that were on staff at the National Security Council and for the vice president. And he believed what he preached. He believed what he was doing and was tremendously sincere. Juxtapose that, I met with Obama. I had a chance to have an hour-long conversation with him.
Yep.
Yeah, and he, quite frankly, was a putz. I mean, and I wasn't the only one that thought that. The other 5 people in the room with me, there was only 5 of us, and we're talking to him about what we thought was the greatest threat to national security. And he was like, lounged in a chair and just looked at us and said, "I don't get religion, but I'm not going to let people drag me into a war over it." And I was like, "So that's what you got out of this whole conversation?" Like this. I was like, it was mind numbing. It was mind numbing. Yeah. Very different.
We were in a meeting with the Clintons, any of the Clintons?
Yes. With Hillary and
did you feel the demonic spirit right away when she walked in the room?
I don't think I did.
When she walked, did it make noise when her...
I didn't. I mean, she was intense. She was definitely intense. Clinton was extremely personable. Mr. Clinton, Bill was extremely personable. But he wasn't, I don't know. He wasn't a statesman like I thought W was. But then again, I've always been conservative. So I've always had an affinity for the Republicans.
Let's see. Crocs of Steel, we're glad to have you from Twitch. One of our favorites that join us here off Twitch.
I hope you caught Amir Tesfari today on that show we told you to watch.
Yeah. So he wanted to ask about the background, how you met the president. You were working, right?
Yes.
He missed the beginning part.
Yeah, the beginning part, I laid that kind of out. I was a counterterrorism expert. I was a federal contractor for the U.S. government.
Amy says she's glad to hear that George W. is sincere.
Yeah, I know people don't like him now, Amy, but I mean, I loved him. He was one of the greatest presidents to work for. It was really, truly an honor.
The only time I did not vote Republican and I didn't vote Democrat, I just didn't vote for a president, was the second term.
It was W.
Yeah, I know. I feel bad now.
Oh,
I feel guilty.
Look what we got in his place.
So one thing I want to end on, well, there's a couple other questions, but I'm afraid that I just don't want to go. We're already at an hour. One thing I do want to end on is that, everybody hearing your...
Wait, can I answer his question?
Yeah. Did you meet?
Yes, I actually had a private meeting, just me and this other gentleman with Cheney and 2 of his staff members. That meeting was an hour and a half. And so he's extremely intelligent, asks extremely relevant questions, very thoughtful, very serious, a statesman. Like, you definitely felt a presence when he was in the room.
Did you feel that he was profiting from the war at all?
I mean, obviously he did, right? He's part of the military industrial complex. So he wanted the oil. But I mean, I wanted the oil.
Personally profiting.
I'm sure. I mean, Halliburton and all those companies, he had shares and his family had shares. But when everyone said that, we just went in there for oil. I'm an American, so let's go there and get oil. What's wrong with getting oil?
Trump had the right idea.
Yeah. I mean, oil independence.
If we're putting this much time, blood, our soldiers that died, that's the least we should get out of it.
Yeah.
Right.
What's wrong with that?
We didn't take the country. Could have took it and made it our, one of our
colony.
Yeah, colony. Yeah,
United States of Iraq.
Yeah,
like Puerto Rico.
Yes. Okay, so I want to get to my final question, and so we've laid out your history as in Islam, and I mean, you studied it, and you knew. I mean, you rose to the top. I mean, as high as you could get. You were teaching presidents and crowds of people. And again, you tried to warn them of what was going on. Then what happens? How do you go from Muslim? This is your testimony, and you can give as long of an answer as you want. But how is that possible that you're that engrossed? You're living in a compound. You'd even gone to Mecca, right?
Oh yeah.
And you even
37 Muslim countries.
37 Muslim countries.
My entire social network, everything was Muslim.
Were you not really Muslim?
That's funny. Some people accuse me of that I was actually a spy the whole time, which really makes me giggle because I think that's really funny. But
so no, you were in the faith. I mean, when you came to taking off your head cover, when you were fleeing from Washington because of 9/11, you really did stop in
oh yeah, I put it on as soon as I arrived in the driveway.
And this is all nobody's around.
Nobody's around.
So this is, I mean, that's the real test.
Yeah, right? Absolutely. I mean, I lived by myself with my daughter for most of my life. I could have taken it off anytime. I could have gone and hang out in a bar. I actually had friends who did that, who would take their head covers off and go shoot pool. So
that deep in the faith, what happens? I mean, you would normally see somebody that faithful die a Muslim.
Well, see, that's the thing that's why when people say you were a spy the whole time, maybe I was the Lord's spy the whole time because because the switch flipped. I mean, I don't know. What would Apostle Paul say? Would he say he was a Christian the whole time and that he was sent to persecute the Christians and then turn? I mean, the Lord's transformation can happen in a blink of an eye.
Wow.
But when I look back, he gave me all of this information and this, I don't know, this just wealth of knowledge and experience. And then it flipped on a dime. So, I mean, he's obviously been with me the whole time. There was obviously, those he foreknew, he predestined. Who he predestined, he chose, and who he chose, he, I forgot the last one. And then he glorifies them, justifies, and who he justifies, he glorifies. So he foreknew it that I was going to come, but I had to walk that road. And as soon as I took my head cover off, I was at the FBI. I was just tired of wearing it. I was tired of every JTTF I walked into.
It all came to wearing that head cover. That was
literally
that did it.
Literally, I just thought to myself, I'm just tired of wearing this thing. I mean, I would.
It wasn't the relationship with the extremist, not relationship, but being associated with extremists. It wasn't none of that. It was the head cover.
Wow, I'm just tired of wearing it. I was just, it was exhausting. It was exhausting. And I was tired of being identified. I felt I was at an age where I was tired of being identified by a piece of fabric. And I was doing really important work at the Bureau. I was traveling to very bizarre, very average Midwest, US cities to interview terrorists. And the first thing that would happen when I walked in the room is that everybody would like hold their breath, what is she doing here? What does she do? I just got tired of it. And as soon as I took the head cover off, the religion unraveled.
Wow.
Yeah. It was
unraveled. It just was not true.
Well, people told me I was going to hang from my hair for an eternity in hellfire.
Yeah.
And I said, how am I worshiping a God that was going to hang me from my hair for taking a piece of fabric off? And everything that I did was worthless.
So you go from a God that was punishing and hateful to a loving God.
Exactly.
And how did that make you feel?
I mean, that's just, it's transformative, right? It's just, you've arrived. I mean, when I met the Lord Jesus Christ, it was, and people say, hey, like, how did you learn so much about the Bible so fast? And it was, again, for the Lord, there is no time. So when I started to read the Bible and listen, again, I do have, pretty good marbles up there. I could put pieces of things together.
Even though they said you were crazy.
Even though they said I was crazy. But I was an evil genius. And he just downloaded it. It just downloaded the Bible into my heart because I'd read so much scripture in Islam and I knew so much about the stories that when I was confronted with the truth of the Bible, it blossomed.
You're in the light.
Yeah, it's just in the light.
From darkness to light. Okay, Crocs of Steel. So while you were talking, Crocs of Steel had asked, and I was listening, by the way.
Oh, sure, no problem.
Multitask. Sorry, it's not on Twitch, but he was talking about the information. Can I get a link to your website or blog or any written work? Very interesting. So I put in the Resurrect Ministry link.
Awesome.
So anybody else that wants to know more about Hedieh and her ministry, go to Resurrect Ministry. I don't know where I was going with that. Resurrectministry.com. It's not .org, right? It's .com.
.com.
Yeah. And check it out
Amy
there.
asked if I ever met Biden, and I actually haven't. He's one of the.
Oh yeah, you never saw him in the White House running around.
Nope.
Was he already in the basement? You think?
I think so.
Did they already keep hiding him?
Yeah,
he never made a wise decision.
No, and we never saw him. We and all the counterterrorism meetings that we had, and then we had a White House conference and stuff. He was never there.
Why would you?
Why
would you have him there? You can see what kind of.
I don't think he bothered it. Yeah,
like everybody just laughs. Like, you ever been in a group of people and everybody's like talking intelligently, and the one guy said, "Hey, let's go have peanut butter." Like you go. What?
Like, where'd that guy come from?
Biden, go sit in the corner. We don't want to hear it.
Stay out of this.
You're ridiculous. And again, Crocs says, that's why I love having Crocs of Steel on from Twitch. He says, again, not a Christian, but this is very interesting stuff.
Thank you.
That's why we do this, is that I think we can reach some people like that. And also, if you go to the AndyFalcoShow.com, Crocs of Steel, more of our videos are in that YouTube channel.
Some of the old stuff. The first interview that Andy did of me almost a year ago, I tell more of my story, my personal story. Amy's saying that Biden was outside looking for the ice cream truck.
Yeah.
Inevitably, probably, because I don't know how many times I spent a lot of time in the Obama White House because I was at the FBI and we had constant meetings about our programs. And even before that, I was considered a White House darling for my program because I had one of the only evidence-based counterterrorism programs in the country. I did have the first. So I was there all the time and I never saw him.
When you walk in with your head covering and looking Muslim, walking in towards wherever their security is, did they just wave you in, or did they always have to check your shoes?
Always got to go through the scanner.
Yeah.
Yep. Always got to go through the scanner.
Nobody ever got waved through.
No, but at the FBI, I hate it. That's one of the reasons I took it off because the FBI has also double doors, and the guys behind the counter, just the way they would look at me. I was literally the only person in the building with a head cover.
After 9/11, especially.
At headquarters when I went to work every day.
Wow. This is one of my favorite interviews of all time.
Oh, I thank you. It was your idea. You're so good at this.
One of my favorite guests.
You're a good interviewer. You're the best.
Thank you. This just all came together at Chili's.
Yes.
Just like an hour before we went live. Because you were telling the story and I'm going, wait, what are you talking about? And then we were going and looking on the internet for stuff. And just again, we want to show credibility. I never want to come on, especially with you, and just say a bunch of stuff and not show, information. So we were looking up stuff and making sure the dates were correct and that kind of stuff. So it's important to us that we give you good, solid information. But thank you for trying to warn us. About Osama Bin Laden. I wish the people would listen. It would have saved a lot of lives.
Oh, look at Croc's question. That is that one.
Go ahead.
I had a TS clearance in the military and that was intense. I can't imagine the process you had to go through, and I'm sure you had a higher clearance. Oh, what can I tell you about that process? The TSSCI clearance. People People ask me about that a lot.
And then he says the TS interview was very intrusive.
Yeah. Wow. So Crocs, did you do it with a lie detector test, like during a polygraph? Did you have to go through the TS interview in a polygraph? Because I went through that several times and it was extremely intense because the questions they ask you are not just intrusive, they're downright offensive. And it's meant to rattle you.
Yeah.
And so it's a very, very difficult process.
Yeah. I told you about my polygraph for the police departments that I went through. Every time I went through, they'd ask me two questions: my name and where I lived, and they'd stop it and said, "Are you Catholic?" I said, "Well, yeah, I was raised Catholic." It says, "Because it already says you're lying. You Catholics and feel like you feel guilty about everything."
Right.
So you got to calm down. So yeah, those polygraphs. So I'm glad that mine didn't go in. Although the psych test did go and ask if you had sex with animals and if you ever play with yourself out in public. And it's like, really, this is part of, let me see these questions.
Well, they apparently didn't ask Strzok and Lisa Page about that because wow, I don't buddies with Strzok and Page. No, they were.
Did you go on a double date with them?
No, they were my boss's colleagues.
Andy?
So no, my boss was Brian. Andy was his boss.
Oh, okay.
So they were in those roundtables every couple of days.
All right. So Amy says, "Thank you."
Thank you, Amy.
Thanks for sharing
I'm
your
glad.
insight and appearance, our experiences. Anything you want to finish with, or did we cover?
No, I'm grateful that I was saved and redeemed by the blood of Christ. That's all.
I'm so happy that you feel that going to a high school football game and sitting on the stands, tired as heck because we woke up at 4:30 in the morning.
Yes.
That was like living in a movie.
Yeah.
With me. A horror movie?
No.
Are you sure?
It was like it was a rom-com. It was a rom-com. Because it was, and I tell Andy, like, you have to have grace for me because sometimes I do get frustrated because it's so different. It's all so foreign to me. And to my daughter, mind you, this like very exciting lifestyle I had meant I was never home. So my daughter didn't see me for the first 10 years of her life. And I wasn't married to her father. So she had she's never had a father around. And she grew up with over a dozen nannies. Like every 6 or 8 months, somebody would quit. And she had to stay home alone with them while I traveled, or she was at a friend's house. And it was a really hard life, living out of a suitcase, and I blew my knee out and I was shot at and I got frostbite and I mean, all kinds of crazy, crazy, dangerous things. And so this is just, the Lord just redeemed all those years and gave me the dream I had as a little girl.
Wow. You're the first woman I know that has a go bag.
Go bag. I gotta go. We got a garage that'll last with food and supplies.
Yeah, we gotta go garage.
We gotta go garage that'll last us for 6 months if this apocalypse comes.
Oh my gosh, that is so funny. It reminds me of that commercial. Have you ever seen that commercial? The guy's like, he's like a 007, right? It's like he's helicoptering on the skids and he's parachuting and he's shooting bad guys and his phone rings, right? It's ringing. And he's throwing a hand grenade and he answers the phone. "Mom, why are you bothering me at work?" And he goes, "I just want to know, if you were going to come over for dinner."
Well,
Mom.
I have a similar story. Okay, so I'm in Lebanon. Civil war breaks out. Airport blew up. And my parents called because I had to tell them I was pregnant after the doctors told me after 17 years I would never get pregnant. I wasn't married. And I'm pregnant and I'm in the Civil War and the airport just blew up. And my parents were like, "Come home now." And I'm like, "I'm trying. I'm trying." I don't know how, but I'm going to do it. You know,
black stuff on your face and twigs in your hair and you're trying to sneak through.
I told you what I did to get out of.
Oh yeah.
Out of there.
We can't tell that story.
So, yeah.
Oh my gosh. All right. So we're going to sign off now. Priscilla says, "This was awesome and fascinating. Thank you both for your service and sharing your experience. God bless America."
God bless America.
And Croc said, I enjoy only having to read
and now enjoys having only a secret clearance now, which doesn't mean they probe your rear end with electrodes.
No. Some of those guys enjoyed that part. All right. Thank you.
Thank you,
Hedieh.
guys.
I appreciate it very much. You guys have a great night. And thank you for sharing this with us. But if you think this is important to other people to see the information that we just laid out, share it. It would do us a great deal of good for people to see what it is that we're doing, and especially what Hedieh has got a couple shows going now, as you know, with
yes. Oh, thank you. And Priscilla mentioned that the show was great. Thank you, Priscilla.
Yeah. So I think it was Danielle.
Was it? It was definitely.
It was somebody.
My labor of love.
Sorry.
So
yeah, somebody commented. Sorry about that. Hitting the wrong
I think it was
here.
Priscilla.
But yeah. So you have a show on His Glory, and then we have some stuff going on in Christian Post. You write an article for Christian Post.
Yes, and we're soon going to be part of a podcast network for our Living Fearless devotional.
Yeah, things are happening. So please share. Again, I think people would love to hear what goes on in Washington, D.C. There used to be this idea that it was just really all like awesome.
It's a circus.
It's a circus.
It's a circus, folks.
Circus. All right, my friends. We love you guys. Again, thank you for joining us, and we appreciate you being here with us tonight. Have a great night, and we'll see you.
God bless.
On the next one. Take care.
Bye.